You know, when you picture the Caribbean, you're probably thinking of clear blue water, white sandy beaches, paradise, right? Well, for a critical time during World War II, those same shores were a fiery, smoke-filled battlefield. We're going to dive into how this tropical getaway became a forgotten front line and why it was way more important than most of us ever learned. It's a pretty shocking contrast, isn't it? A place we all associate with relaxation became a super violent and absolutely critical theater of war. The answer isn't on the beaches, though. It's all about what was flowing through its shipping lanes.
So long before the first shot was even fired, the Caribbean was already vital to the Allies. It wasn't just a strategic dot on the map, it was quite literally the fuel tank and the factory floor for the entire war machine.
Okay, what's so wild is the dangerous gap between what the Allies thought and what was actually true. They looked at the Caribbean and saw their safe lake, a secure backyard where nothing bad could happen. But the reality? It was the wide open, completely unprotected gas station that was powering their entire war effort.
And it all came down to two resources you just couldn't get anywhere else in that quantity. First, you had the high-octane aviation fuel that kept the Allied air forces flying. And second, bauxite ore. That's the main ingredient for the aluminum you need to build those very same planes. Take away the Caribbean, and the Allied war effort would have literally ground to a halt.
That kind of vulnerability, well, it was basically a giant invitation. And in early 1942, the German U-boat command decided to RSVP. They called their plan Operation Neuland, New Land, and it was about to shatter the Caribbean's peaceful illusion overnight. The attack was just devastatingly effective. On the morning of February 16th, a whole wolf pack of German and Italian submarines hit targets all at once, across the entire region. There was zero warning. 1 minute, it was a calm morning. The next, the sea itself was on fire.
The main prize, the absolute crown jewel on their target list, was this: the Lago refinery on Aruba. At that point in history, it was the single largest oil refinery on the entire planet. Taking it out wouldn't just be a punch, it could be a knockout blow to the Allies.
The U-boats torpedoed tankers right there in the harbor, just a stone's throw from the refinery itself. All that oil ignited, and as one person who saw it said, the attack turned the water into a sheet of fire. Can you just imagine seeing that from your front porch? And then, one of the most unbelievable what-if moments of the whole war happened. The German U-boat commander ordered his crew to start shelling the giant oil storage tanks on shore. But a fatal mistake saved the day. The gun crew forgot to take a safety plug out of the barrel. When they fired the first shot, the gun just exploded. It tragically killed one of their own men, but that one single, simple mistake almost certainly saved the most important refinery in the entire world. With German U-boats basically having a field day, the human cost was just staggering. And the Allied response? Well, to put it nicely, it was improvised. And this wasn't just about military targets or oil tankers. Civilian ships were fair game. Just a few weeks before that big attack on Aruba, a Canadian passenger ship, the RMS Lady Hawkins, was sunk. 251 people died. Just think about that. That's from a single ship. The story of the few who survived is just brutal. One lifeboat, built for 63 people, had 76 survivors crammed into it, adrift for 5 whole days. And their daily ration? 1 biscuit and 1 spoonful of condensed milk. That was it. This was the terrifying reality out there in the wolf pack's hunting grounds. And we have to talk about the local heroes in all of this. The men who actually worked on these tankers were mostly from the Caribbean islands. Hundreds of sailors from Trinidad, Barbados, and Guyana died in what they called the burning oil. Their incredible courage is so often just a footnote in the big histories of the war. So the American response, at first, was, well, it was pure desperation. They brought in something called the Civil Air Patrol. We're talking about regular citizens, hobbyist pilots in their tiny little planes, and their primary weapon against a hardened German U-boat? A box of empty glass bottles. I am not making this up. They would literally throw them out the window, hoping the sound of the bottles hitting the water might scare the submarine into diving. It sounds almost funny now, but it shows just how completely unprepared they were for this. But, desperation can lead to innovation. The Allies learned their lessons the really hard way, and by 1943, they finally started to turn the tide against the U-boats. Their counterattack really boiled down to 3 key things. First, total blackouts on the islands. No more city lights silhouetting ships for an easy shot. Second, they finally started using the convoy system, grouping ships together with naval escorts. And third, long-range bombers started patrolling the skies, turning the hunters into the hunted.
And the results? They were dramatic. In 1942, the Caribbean was basically a U-boat's paradise. By late 43, thanks to these new tactics, it had become one of the most dangerous places on Earth for a submarine to be. The threat was, for all intents and purposes, over.
So the U-boats left, the war ended, but the battle left something behind, a hidden graveyard on the ocean floor. And now, today, in 2026, the ghosts of this forgotten war are starting to cause a whole new kind of problem.
The sheer scale of it is hard to wrap your head around. We're talking about more than 400 sunken ships and 17 U-boats just littering the seabed. It's an entire battlefield just sitting down there, hidden right under the waves.
But here's the thing. After 80 years, those steel hulls are finally starting to rust through and collapse. And as they do, they're leaking what's called legacy oil. All the fuel that was still in them, directly onto some of the world's most beautiful and fragile coral reefs. It's a toxic final chapter to a war everyone forgot.
Which really brings us all the way back to the main question here. Most history books will call the Caribbean a minor theater of World War II. But when you realize that the fuel for the bombers over Europe and the aluminum to build those bombers came from here, you have to ask yourself, was it really minor? Or was this vacation paradise actually the engine room that powered the entire Allied victory?